Aleph, 92a. And as you said yesterday, we concluded our discussion on the issue of Das. And now we get to another list of statements by Rabbi Lezer related to our relationship with scholars, guests, the poor, our food, our table, as we shall presently see.
One thing about Das is more bracha.
Yeah.
Das with, of course, the fourth bracha.
Say it again. That the Gemara bracha about Das is the fourth bracha, yeah,
exactly.
or the first bracha for request.
Exactly, the first, but also we have the Havdalah in there as well. So
that's correct.
Part of that is know what's
to discern what's right and wrong.
That's
so you talked about yesterday how someone doesn't have Das is like exiled because he's lacking the moral compass.
Compass. Also, you can't make distinguishing.
That's what the Gemara said. The reason why it's the request number one is precisely for that reason. Because if you don't have Das, then everything else that you can have all the blessings in the world, but if you're lacking discerning of what's right and what's wrong, then the whole thing is for naught. Like Goyla.
Yeah, the Marsha makes the point. Normally Hashem is Rakim Makol Masav.
Yeah.
But someone without Das is like he's like a behemoth. That's what all I can do. A person without Das, he lowered the behemoth. He should have been a mensch, not just a behemoth. That's the kind of thinking. That's why
falls in line with what we're talking about.
And he'll get jealous and so on because he's abusing the talents that Hashem has given.
It falls very much in line with what we've talked about. So, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so the line begins with the word Das.
Say something on Havdalah.
The word Das.
No, you have to have Havdalah in the first.
On Friday night when we make the bracha on Friday. Motzei Shabbos, on Saturday night we make the bracha for Havdalah, separating between Shabbos and Yom Tov. We put it in the bracha of Das, which is Chayin Olam Das. The first three brachas of Shemoneh Esrei are praising Hashem, and then begins with sets of requests. The first request is Das, asking God for Das, and in that bracha is where we make Havdalah. Because Das is the capacity to be able to distinguish between what's good and what's not good. Havdalah is about distinguishing between holy and the profane.
It's based on Kohelet.
That's right.
The time, place for everything.
That's right.
As a person with Das knows when to speak,
knows what's
when's holy, what's not so holy. Everything's important.
Which is actually connected to Parshas Korach.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the Havdalah part with the cat.
No.
And the bracha of Havdalah, separation between Shabbos and Yom Tov, is actually connected to Parshas Korach. Right? Because Parshas Korach, Korach claims that all Jews should be the same, no distinctions. And as Rashi points out, that Moshe Rabbeinu responded by saying, in the same way God made division between night and day, Hashem made divisions between Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. There are distinctions. Everybody has their place, everybody has the right time, and everybody has the right things. It's kind of connected to our parsha as well.
Exactly with that, you have to know exactly.
No, what's right. And Yiddish is Vuayin and voice, when in and when not in.
Exactly.
That wissen Vu and when. You got to know where and when. You have all the good things, but you got to know when and where and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Just the Kohelet, the time and place for everything.
Yeah. Even for hatred.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to know when.
Yeah, war and peace.
Know when.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So line begins with the word Das, and then the second word is V'amar Rabbi Lezer. And then right after there's like a big aleph after a little circle thing.
What line are we on?
The line begins with the word Das. It's towards it's under the wide set of lines, about 10 lines down from you count to the wide set of lines. The line begins with the word Das, and then V'amar, then the second word is V'amar.
Okay, yes, that's right.
Okay, V'amar Rabbi Lezer says, call bias, any home, she'ein divrei Torah nishmoim by belayla. Any home in which Torah is not heard at night, eish ochlasai. A fire consumes it. A fire consumes the home. I don't know if it means literally or metaphorically, as in the hell, as in the fires of Gehenna. That's what it's at least seen from the pasuk. And after Rashi touches it, Zeh Isha Shal Gehenna. I don't know if it means literally an actual fire in the home. Okay, so Shneimar, the verse reads, Kol Choshech Tamun Litzfonav. Any darkness, meaning nighttime, that's hidden. Tamun means hidden. Litzfonav, from Tzafon. And Tzafon is Matzpuni HaTorah, from the secrets of Torah. So it's hidden from the secrets, as in it doesn't have Torah. At Choshech, at nighttime. Teichleu Eish, will be eaten by a fire. Loi Nofech, it doesn't require air, doesn't require oxygen, which is why Rashi says, talking about the fires of Gehenna. The fires of Gehenna aren't physical, and therefore don't need oxygen to exist. But it's metaphorically referred to as fire. Yira Shri Ba'ahaloi, and as Rashi explains the pasuk, because Yira is bad to him, Shrid, the refugees in his tent. Who are the refugees? Who are the Srid, remnant, not the refugees, remnant. Ein Srid, and the remnant, the refugees are Elatam Chacham, a sage, scholars. Torah learning is referred to as refuge. Right? The cities of refuge, literally the place where the people used to run if they killed someone accidentally, was a place of Torah learning. Right? There's oftentimes this idea is where Torah learning is compared to being refuge. In other words, a person is stuck or trapped in the distractions of his life, and Torah provides him a refuge. And here's the verse which backs that up. As the verse reads, "V'shridim Hashem kadeya," the pasuk talks about God calls upon those who call upon Him, and then it says, as God says to the refugees which God calls upon. That's referring to scholars. Okay, so anybody who doesn't have Torah at night in his home, he doesn't have refuge, then his home is consumed by fire of Gehenna. So perhaps this continues from the discussion before, for going down the line of what we talked about, going back way to Tchias HaMesim. Talked about the resurrection of the dead being the culmination of the purpose for creation. And we began with someone who teaches Torah to others, or withholds Torah from others. And then we went to Das, that the person himself has to connect to Torah, even if he learns it. Not just teach it, but he has to connect to it truthfully himself. Now it gets to another level. Even someone who maybe himself, then we get to this idea of, again, his home should have Torah study, just on a very basic level. It's kind of, teaching Torah, connecting to the Torah, and just learning Torah. And then in a moment he's going to get even further of hosting Torah. Even if he can't learn himself, at least hosting Torah. As the Gemara says in the next line. Rabbi Lezer says, anyone who does not provide from his estate, the chassav means estate, from his wealth, for scholars, in other words, doesn't host them, doesn't support them, doesn't ever get to see success, God forbid. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, we're reciting the same, or actually the next verse from the verse before is the next verse, right? Yep, or it's a couple of verses later, where it says, Ein srid la'achloi, there's no refuge to his food, meaning he hasn't left behind any food, Akein la'yachol toivoi, and therefore there's no goodness placed upon him. And as you mentioned before, when we say refuge, we mean a scholar. As the verse reads, the same verse we quoted before, and the refugees that Hashem calls upon, referring to the scholars. So therefore, someone doesn't leave behind food, as the verse reads. For the srid, for the refuge, doesn't leave food for the sages, doesn't support Talmidei Chachamim, doesn't see success. So again, it's going down the line. It starts with teaching Torah, and then Das, connecting to Torah, and then having Torah at night in his home, learning Torah, and now to at least supporting scholars. If he can't learn on his own, at least support others who do learn. And then he goes even further. There are no Talmidei Chacham to support, at least support the poor. As it goes on to say, Rabbi says, anyone who does not leave bread behind on his table, on the simple surface level, this means for those who are less fortunate. Yeah. Doesn't see success. Doesn't see success ever. God forbid. As the first reads, there's no remnant of his food, and therefore doesn't have any good. So the previously translated, there's no remnant of his food, meaning to say he didn't leave food to the remnants, meaning didn't leave food for the scholars who are referred to as remnant, who are referred to as refugees. Here he's taking it quite literally. You didn't leave behind any food, and thus no blessing. There's no remnant to your food. There's nothing left over for others. But on the other hand, the Gemara says, but we have a seeming contradiction. Rabbi Lezer himself said, anybody who leaves bread behind on his food, as if he's serving idol worship, because he's leaving food behind for who? And apparently there was some idol worship back in the day where they would leave bread on their food to be given to whatever idol it was. Actually, the pasuk here refers to it as a god. It's kind of a Torah called God. Yeah. Shneimar, the verse reads, Ha'archim lagad shulchan. Those who leave behind for God on their table or set table for God, the malumani memasach, and
They were trying to get lucky.
those who leave to money, like masach, I think is libation. Isn't that right? They leave behind libations for this other idol worship. The point being, leaving food behind is negative. So which one is it? Rabbi first said you're supposed to leave behind food, otherwise you don't see any blessing. You're supposed to leave behind food for the poor. And here he's saying that if you leave bread on your table, it's as if you're preparing it for idol worship. So how do we deal with this? It says the Gemara, like Kasha, this is the contradiction. Hadi kashtem bahadei, hadi le kashtem bahadei. When the verse says, when we say you're supposed to leave food behind, there's no whole pieces of bread. It's to say you cut slices of bread to eat, and there are crumbs, there are pieces, there are extra slices. That's to be left on the table. But the problem is when you put full loaves of bread or full pieces of bread on the table after you're done eating. That is as if you're serving idol worship. And this actually is halacha. So I'm going to quickly translate from Dal Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Siman Kopei, Orechaim, Siman Kopei. That is 180, Din Perudia Pas. And the first two halachas read as follows. Anybody who doesn't leave behind any bread on his table, doesn't see any simon bracha ever, doesn't see any success, as the verse reads, there's no refuge, there's no leftover from his food, and therefore there's no good. It's the Gemara we quoted. But the bracha, when it comes to blessing, it says, Oichel v'hoiser, a person eats and leaves behind. You should leave behind for others. And then it says, therefore, second halacha, it's appropriate not to remove the tablecloth and the bread until after Berachas Hamazon, until after benching. So that's obvious that when he's thanking Hashem for all the good who has prepared him this food. So there's two elements here. Number one, there's the element of leaving behind food. Symbolically speaking, he leaves for others, as the Gemara says here, and that brings blessing. Otherwise, God forbid, the other way around. But there's a second element that Torah adds here, sourced from the Gemara and Brachas, that leaving behind the leftover bread is a way of showing that this is what he's thanking Hashem for. And if it's important to know this, clean the crumbs and remove the bread from the table after benching. It's an important thing to know this. Now, however, if there's no bread left over on the table, he ate it all, he should not bring a full loaf of bread to put it on the table. Because that would seem like he's preparing the table for Avodah Zarah. And he quotes the verse that we just quoted, the person who prepares the table for God. But if there already was a full loaf of bread on the table, like on Shabbos, when a person breaks bread on 2 loaves of bread, and he happens to only be eating one, let's say, then he should not, it's better not to remove it from the table. So when the Gemara says leaving behind a full loaf of bread, it actually means placing a full loaf of bread. The act of putting a full loaf of bread on the table after you're done eating, that is indicative of as if you're setting a table for somebody. For who? And there's Avodah Zarah. If you're doing it because you're thanking Hashem, then you're thanking Hashem for the food you ate. You don't bring new bread. You bring the bread upon which you made the bracha. Or you leave the bread upon which you made the bracha. Whether it happens to be a full loaf of bread because you made it on 2 loaves and you only ate one, or it's crumbs left over from the others. So it's an important halacha to know, and it's something that's proper custom. Don't clear the table of bread until after benching. In that way, the bracha you're making is on the food that you're looking at that Hashem has provided for you. But if there's nothing left, don't bring food to the table, because that would be as if you're thanking Hashem for the food you ate. You're not serving God food, God forbid. God doesn't eat food. Avodah Zarah, people thought they ate food, and they've served their Avodah Zarah with food. We're not doing that. We're thanking Hashem for the food we just ate. And thus, all you leave behind is from the food you just ate.
Does the Alter Rebbe say anything about after you've benched and you have...
Then you clear the table.
You have various slices of bread left and crumbs, what to do with it?
He mentions a little bit here about sweeping the table, because they used to... He mentions in the next set of halachas about sweeping the floor, because they used to pour mayim achronim on the floor and it would ruin the bread. And the halacha is, we mentioned this in brachas because of Bal Tashches, which is a separate set of halachas mentioned in Yeridea, that a person is not allowed to destroy food, property in general, even your own. Right? Your property's not yours, your body's not yours, it's all a gift from Hashem, and you have to treat it with respect. There's a whole bunch of halachas we learned about this in Gemara brachas. So it doesn't mention it explicitly here, but presumably you're not allowed to destroy it, not allowed to throw it out if it's still edible.
What the next morning or whatever, it's not edible. It's it's stale already. Like, what do you do with it?
A small trick. I learned this. What?
Save it for after Shabbos.
No,
birds.
No. You could do that if you want, but even as just a practical tip, if you take the bread, Friday night, and you put it into a Ziploc bag, it's airtight, it'll be fresh in the morning. It'll still say fresh in the morning.
Right.
That's just a small tip.
We usually don't eat bread after that, right?
What do you mean?
And it's not even, it's just, let's say you have 6 or 7 slices left over. Because sometimes you cut too much for the guests, right?
All the time.
So we put it in a Ziploc bag. Okay, and it's fine the next day, but we don't really eat bread. Shabbos day. Then what?
That was I guess that was the reason why the minhag in my house was every Motzei Shabbos was French toast made of the challah.
Okay.
Maybe that's why, not just not to waste the challah. My mother would make French toast. Okay. My wife does the same thing for our children. Okay, wonderful day. Good Chodesh, everybody. God willing, we'll continue tomorrow.